Okay. So in the last live, we were talking about the different temperaments of the child, the strong-willed child, the child who Montessori has the weaker personality. And we were also talking about the importance of building the character and being able to build the capacity to make choices. Yeah. And we spoke about how like this whole process of making choices is actually a really important part of human development, because as adults, what we're doing most of the day is we are making choices about whether you're going to stay an extra 5 minutes in bed, or whether you're going to get up, or whether you're going to eat something healthy or something that's not healthy, on how you're going to speak to your children, how you're going to approach your coworkers. We're constantly making choices about how we live our life. And that ability to make choices and to make the right choices is actually a part of education that needs something that we need to be cultivating and nurturing within the child. Okay, so a lot of education philosophies and theories, they don't even talk about this whole process of making choices, but we as Muslims know that making choices is such an integral part of our faith. And throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us time and time and time again, you know, we're giving you signs for you to choose. We're giving you signs for you to make the right choices. We're telling you these stories of the past for you to make your choice. And Allah's constantly getting us to reflect on our actions and the choices that we make. And he's giving us knowledge and experience from our ancestors to help us to be able to make the right choices in life. Okay, and of course, like, being a Muslim is a choice. Practicing your deen is a choice. Praying with khushu' is a choice. Wearing the hijab is a choice. You know, all these things that we do as Muslims, this comes from our choice, right? We're not doing it by force. It comes from by choice, especially as adults. So this young child that comes to us, they need to have that opportunity to learn how to make the right choices. They need to learn the knowledge that will govern their choice. They need to learn how to control their urges and control themselves, so they're not getting out of control and just doing things without thinking about the choice that you make. Okay, they need to also learn from the feedback that they get when they make choices, right? So if you make a wrong choice, you're going to get feedback, and that feedback essentially is teaching you so that you can shape your choice as you move forward in the next years to come. Okay, and I think that as an educator, I would say that making choices, this ability to make choices, is actually one of the most important parts of education, but it's so often missed. But when you think about it for a minute, and you think about this little child that's in front of you, who's going to grow up one day to be a husband or a wife, or you know, somebody in working or whatever it may be, and you think about it for a moment, you know that ability to make the right choices, it's going to guide them in so much that they're going to do in the future. And children who have had an educational experience that provides choice and allows them to make choices, they develop this really, really solid, mature and wise ability to make the right choices at the right time. And then, you know, as you know, when our children, when they grow up and they go out into, let's say, the real world, the adult world, and they become their very own adults, that ability to make the choices is really what they're going to carry with them. You know, they might go to university and get a degree, they might not. They might open a business, they might not. They might get married, they might not. But their ability to make choices is something that they're going to really carry with them, and it's going to influence everything that they're going to do, right? And for me, as a mother with a teenager, I can really, really see the impact of, you know, my son having had an opportunity to develop his choice-making mechanism, how that impact has had on him now as a almost 20-year-old, and how as a mother, for me, it's so much easier having this, almost 20-year-old who I know is going to make good choices better than I probably did when I was his age. And it's not because I influenced his choices, no, but it's because I gave him an environment. He had an educational environment and a home environment that allowed him to make choices and learn from those choices, learn from the consequences. So if we're talking about this choice thing, we'll see, like, in the modern days, we have some big extremes that go on, right, with parenting. So we have the very submissive parents who allow their children to do anything. So those children have unlimited choices. They can just do whatever they want to do. And because they're children, often if they make the wrong choice, especially on something big, we don't really hold them accountable to their choices. They don't have to really face the consequences, right? I'm sure that you've probably heard many stories of like parents who've allowed their children to do some make a choice on something that you might think is way beyond this child's maturity level, and then the outcome is not positive, but then the child he doesn't live the outcome, he doesn't live the consequence, so he doesn't get the feedback to learn from that. Okay, so we've got parents who just let their children do everything. For example, one of the new trends that I've been seeing recently is allowing children to choose the school that they want to go to. Young children, I'm not talking about teenagers, I'm talking about even preschoolers, like taking your preschooler to different schools and then be like, okay, which one do you want to go to? And that preschooler, I mean, they don't have the knowledge or the wisdom or the understanding of what the intention or the mechanisms of teaching or whatever it may be to make that choice. And often parents will just ask, well, which one do you want to go to? Oh, you want to go to this one? Why do you want to go to it? I want to go to it because it's got blue chairs. Oh, okay. And then they put their child in that school, for example, but then the consequences of what comes out from that, or what the child is being exposed to, what the child is learning, or whatever it is, the child is not necessarily going to face those consequences in that way, because the parent is now going to kind of take that on, right? And we have things like many things, like children who have got the choice to just have unlimited access to digital devices, and then they go on these digital devices, too much, and they're kind of like drugged by the screen, and then it impacts their development. In a way, later on in life, they're going to face the consequences, but at that very moment of time, it's more the parents who are taking on those consequences and facing those consequences, right, than it is the child. And so when you give your child this unlimited choice, which is not according to their skill level or their knowledge level or their maturity level or their plane of development, when you give the child this unlimited choice, then they're not going to learn how to make the right choices. Okay, because they have to have the knowledge, like what we spoke about in the last session, is that it has to be choices that are according to their ability. They have to have the knowledge and the maturity and the wisdom to be able to make those choices. And then we have to be able to carry through so they can get the feedback from their choice. So we have parents who are very, like, say, submissive and just let their children do everything, and their children have too many choices and they don't face the consequences. And so they grow up not really being able to control their urges, because when they were younger, their choices were very much based on urges, not on knowledge. So, and then they grow up to be these individuals who find it very hard to control the choices that they make. And they will make many wrong choices and mistakes. And as adults, unfortunately, they will make many mistakes until they eventually learn from their mistakes. And then they have to start making wiser choices, but as young adults or teenagers. And then we have the opposite extreme parents who instead, what they do is they limit their child's environment and limit their choices and limit their exposure too much, so that the child doesn't have the room to make any choices, right? And we see that a lot. I think also, like, many of our parents, that generation of parents, many of them did that as well. They really dictated and limited what what their children could do. So then you have a child here who gets frustrated because they're not able to make their own choices, but then they also miss out on the experience and the knowledge and the feedback that comes from making their own choices. And then the result is often when that child gets to a certain age, they're going to just, explode from this bubble that they've been put in. And then they're going to want to do everything that they couldn't do. And because they don't have that choice making mechanism, they don't have anything to guide them when they have that total freedom. So what we're talking about from the Montessori point of view and also from the Islamic point of view is this really fine line of allowing the child to make choices according to their level of responsibility and their level of knowledge and wisdom. And we allow them to make choices, even if we know they're making the wrong choice, but it's a small wrong choice. But we know that in that wrong choice, they're going to they're going to learn something from it. And that's going to then give them wisdom for their next choice. Right? So that's how the prophetic way was, is you don't restrict the child completely. And you also don't give this complete freedom. You have this very middle path. But as educators and parents, I think it's really important we start to become conscious of the child's choice-making opportunities. And we become conscious that every single time the child is making a choice, and then he is experiencing the feedback that comes from that choice, he is developing this mechanism. And the better he can develop it, the more it's going to serve him in his life later on, for him to make those right choices, those choices which please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also choose to keep away from the things that do not please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. And if we're looking I've been in Malaysia for a long time now, so my example of teenagers are mostly in Malaysia now. But if we look at, for example, in Malaysia, if you go to 16, 17, 18-year-olds, so many of them are just making the wrong choices in so many ways. Malaysia has a big problem with smoking and youth on motorbikes at night, driving around in the middle of the night for hours and hours. And they have all these things going on. And, most teenagers cannot resist that. If they see their peers doing that, they don't have enough ability to make their own choices, that they just kind of follow what everyone else is doing. But when we really focus on this mechanism for when the child is young, when they become teenagers and young adults, they know how to make the right choice. So if they're exposed to peers or they're exposed to a community where things like this are going on, they're less likely to choose it. Of course, they might still choose it, but at least they have this better support within them. So for example, like I said, in Malaysia, they have this issue with smoking and vaping, for example. I'm giving you a very extreme example. And recently I asked some children who have had a very Montessori Islamic upbringing, why don't you smoke, or why don't you vape? And they didn't reply to say, oh, because it's haram, and because my mom told me not to, or because of this, or because of that. But most of the replies that came back from this research that I was doing was, it's not the right thing for my body, and it's not the right thing for my health. And at the same time, it's not something we should be doing Islamically. So even though my friends do it, whenever they're smoking or vaping, I just kind of move away to another place and I come back to them later. And I think that seeing that kind of maturity in this youth, being able to choose, even if all their peers are doing it, being able to make a choice about what they want to do rather than just following, I think that is really a huge, one of the huge outcomes of education that we want to have for the children, is they develop this choice. Okay. And then, like we said before, is that when you make mistakes, you learn so much, right? You learn so much about yourself and about life, and you experience so many things in your process of making a mistake. So as an educator, and a Muslim educator and a Montessori educator, we don't want to shy away from allowing the opportunity to make mistakes. We really want the child to make have that opportunity when necessary to make their mistakes, but in a very supportive environment. An environment that's not going to let it become too far that their mistake affects the rest of their life. But at the same time, just the right portion of mistake so that they can learn from it and they can get greater wisdom and greater understanding and knowledge about that particular situation. Okay, so I did ask last time for you guys to think about maybe a choice that you made at some point in your life. It could be your childhood or it could be whenever, some choice that you made, which ended up being the wrong choice, right? And I'm sure we've all had experiences with this. So something that was the wrong choice that you made, but it ended up being one of the biggest lessons and it changed who you became or who you are now. So did you guys manage to think about that? And anyone willing to share? Or do you need some time to think about it now? I know it's quite a while ago. Alia,
yeah, just off the top of my head, just with friendships and just sharing information, and knowing what's the right information, who are the right friends to share things with. And this would have been about in high school, like a lot of friendship choices were wrong. So off the top of my head, that would be something that yeah.
So how do you feel it changed you when you?
It made me more like like hesitant to form friendships, to tell anybody anything about me because I was worried about people, rumors, gossiping, and things like that.
Is there, do you think that there's anything positive that's come out from that experience for you now as an adult?
Yeah, like before I was like I was so eager to have a lot of friends around me, whereas now I'm more selective. And I feel like the quality of friendships that I have now are better than the big group of friendships that I had previously.
Okay, lovely.
So that that's what I like with my kids. I tell them even if you don't have too many friends, that's fine. You just need one or two really good friends.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Does anyone else have any examples of a mistake you made or a wrong choice you made that changed you? I'm sure everybody's got stories. Because often it's these mistakes that we make, or these things that actually they shape us really into becoming who we are. Does anyone have anything they want to share? No, I can share like the story from my son. He's a boxer, so when he was about 17, he he wanted to be all like manly, and he wanted to he took a coach, and he didn't want me to meet the coach. He didn't want my husband to meet the coach. He wanted to just do this all like independently, like a man. And we kept saying to him, we should really meet your coach and really make sure that he's like, legitimate, and he's a good guy, and he's, got your best interest at heart. And he was like, no, I'm grown up. I don't need you to do this. Da, 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 da. And so we let him make that choice to have that boxer coach as boxing. And even though it was so hard for me as a mum, we supported him, and we said, my husband and I said, okay, we think he's making the wrong choice here, but we're going to let him do it so that he can learn from the outcome of that choice. And he had this instructor, And then they set him up for a match, and they mismatched him on purpose with somebody who's like 12 kgs heavier, because it was like a rigged fight, because his instructor that he didn't want us to meet was going to get money out from allowing this other fighter to fight somebody who he's definitely going to lose. Yeah. So basically my son entered this fight. It was a rigged fight, and it was really terrifying for him because the guy was huge. The guy was really skilled, and you know, he got injured quite badly. But then he learned at that point of time that being a man doesn't mean you don't consult with your parents or you don't consult with older people. Being a man doesn't mean that you just do what you want to do, but you don't take into consideration the opinions of others or elders or whatever it may be. And he actually said to me after that experience, he said to me, I learned so much from this. He said, I learned that my mum's always got my back. And he's like, he goes, thank you so much for letting me do this, even though you could see it was wrong. And we could see from the start, because, you know, the coach seemed a bit off. So we could see from the start, but he's like, thank you so much for allowing me to go through this. And he said, you know, now I really value the importance of family, even when you're an adult. And the interesting thing is, after that was when he was 17. After that, every single coach he had and every single fight he had, he would sit with my husband, he would consult with my husband. He'd be like, what do you think of this coach? He said this, what do you think of this pair? Should I fight this guy? Should I not fight this guy? And had I not allowed him, he was 17, so he was still technically a minor. And had I not allowed him to make that choice, he probably would have just not learned this lesson, and then he would have just probably kept trying to have his independent fights, you know, without consulting with us. But because I allowed him to make that choice, and it was kind of a controlled environment, but we were there to support him, it really changed how he approaches his boxing. And now years later, it's made it so much better for me as a mum. I mean, I hope, I don't wish on anyone to have a son who's a boxer, because it's a really horrible thing to go through as a mum, but it makes it so much easier for me as a mum to allow him to do the boxing, because I know that mistake has now made sure that we will always have this communication and discussion about what his fights are and who his coach is and who he's fighting and so on. So sometimes we have to let them make have those mistakes. And especially when we're talking with younger children, we're talking about the mistake could be something as simple as, you know, like I said earlier in the previous Zoom, like, you know, wearing sandals or wearing Wellington boots in the rain. You know, it could be simple things. The choices are always something that, you know, that even if your child makes the wrong choice, it's not going to damage them, and they can come back from it, but they're going to learn a lesson. So the child who goes out with sandals in the rain and their socks get wet, they're going to get that feedback that next time I should really put on my Wellington boots, right? But having wet feet, you know, socks, it's not going to damage them, unless of course it's freezing cold and they're going to get sick, you know. But that experience of their socks getting wet, and, you know, that experience is going to help the child the next time they're choosing their footwear. It's going to help them to make the right choices. So with younger children, it's always this small choices. And then as the child gets older, those choices become a lot bigger, until eventually your child or the children that you are working with, they're going to be their own adults who are making their choices, and they are going to need to do that themselves now. And we stand back, and that's what we are preparing them for. Anyway, so that's a really important part for me, for part of the education of the child, that I think we really have to put at the forefront, you know. And I think at Jameelah, you don't have to have like all of these amazing Montessori materials, and you don't have to do, but if you can start thinking about supporting that choice making in your children that come to you, and also with the parents, talking with them and discussing with them about guiding the choice making process within the children, I think that can really make a huge difference to help those children to develop this ability to make really good choices later on in life. Okay. Imam Ghazali, he said, that let it be known that training children is one of the most important and most emphasized matters. The child is a trust in the custody of his parents. His pure heart is a precious jewel that is free from any engraving or impression, but it is vulnerable to any engraving and is inclined towards any tendency that is impressed on it. And if the child is trained to do good and is brought up accordingly, he will be happy in this life and in the hereafter, and his parents will gain their reward, and so shall every teacher and trainer. And I like, this choice making is part of the training, but it's so often part of the training that we don't even consider, because in Western education, they don't want individuals to grow up making their own choices. They just want individuals to grow up following what's being dictated to them, following the agenda that's being pushed on them, believing the lies. Like, we know too much now about what's going on at the moment in the world, believing the lies and just following. They don't want individuals who grow up to make their own choices or to have their own opinions of things. But you can see that in Islam, this kind of training of the child, of their character, of their personality, of their knowledge, of their ability to make choice, it's one of the most important. And we should really emphasize it very much. Okay, so we go back to this triangle that we spoke about in the last session. And we've spoken about the child already. And we've spoken about the different temperaments and what affects them. And we've also spoken about the ability to make choice. So now we're going to go on to talking about the prepared environment. Okay, so we have the prepared environment and the adult, which are the two more that we're going to try and talk about today. So this concept of the prepared environment is said to be one of Dr. Montessori's her biggest contribution to human development or child development. This concept of having a prepared environment for the child that comes into it. Okay, so in terms of Montessori, she, as an educator, she was very much ahead of the other philosophers of her time with this concept of preparing a child-sized environment, and an environment that contains everything the child needs so that they can experience and interact with the environment in a way that supports their development. We as adults know how important the prepared environment is for us, right? If you're going in your kitchen and you want to cook a meal, and if your kitchen is a big mess and everything is all over the place, it's really difficult. Like, you know, if you're opening a drawer and something else is in there, and you open the fridge and something's missing, and your kitchen environment is not arranged properly, and it's not prepared for you to cook, it's so much harder to go about and do your cooking, right? So we as adults, we are often preparing our kitchen environment, our work environment, our home environment. We're often preparing the environment so that we can have this really effective and positive interaction and experience in that environment, so that we can do the best that we can do. If you have a prepared kitchen, often your cooking is going to take a lot less time. Whereas if your kitchen is kind of like all over the place and nothing has a place, and you know, you're searching for everything, you're going to take a lot longer to cook, right? So as adults, we appreciate a prepared environment, and a prepared environment allows us to be more effective and allows us to have more positive experiences. So it's not something new, but many people don't think about the prepared environment when it comes to the child. So we may prepare our home environment and have wonderful, you know, comfortable sofas, adult size, a lovely dining table and chairs, adult size, utensils, adult size, a sink, adult size. So we prepare our environment suitable for adults. But very often the children are forgotten in the prepared environment. And we just somehow expect the child to adapt to this adult side environment and just kind of get along with it until they're old enough to access it properly. And especially at the time of Dr. Montessori, if you know, the environment of the home environment was definitely not a child-friendly environment. We are seeing a lot of changes taking place nowadays with many people adapting their home environments, adapting their child's environments to make them suitable for them. But at the time of Dr. Montessori, that was not really something heard of. So Dr. Montessori is really the pioneer of this concept of a prepared environment. You know, having small tables and chairs that the child can he can sit at comfortably and can even move and use. Having utensils that are just the right size so that the child can feed themselves, or the child can you know, help with the cooking and chopping things. This is really a concept that came from Dr. Montessori in terms of Western education. Dr. Montessori, she really emphasized this prepared environment because in her method, she believes that the adult is not the main source of the child learning and developing. It's not the lesson that you give as an adult that's really shaping the child and supporting their development, but she believed that it's the child's interaction and experiences in his environment, both the physical environment and the spiritual environment. She believed that is the that is what's going to have the most impact on the child. So the better the prepared environment, the better the experiences the child is going to have, the better support they're going to have for their development. And they are being aided every step of their development because of this prepared environment. Whereas an environment that is not prepared for the children, it's going to really limit the child. And at the same time, it's going to become an obstacle for their development. So Dr. Montessori said that education is not something which the teacher does to the child, but it is a natural process which develops spontaneously in the human being. Yeah? It is not acquired by listening to words, but in virtue of experiences in which the child acts on his environment. Again, we're seeing that the importance here is the child, his experience as he acts on his environment. She says the task of the adult is not to talk, but to prepare and arrange a series of motives for cultural activity in a specially prepared environment for the child. Okay? This is a really, really important concept from Dr. Montessori, because she believes that the child learns from directly interacting with their environment. Okay, she believed the environment itself is what's teaching the child. Okay, she says the environment is fundamental and it must facilitate the expansion of the being in the process of development. Okay, and keeping in mind the stages of development that we've spoken about them before. So in each plane and stage of development, the needs of the child are different and the aims that they're trying to achieve is different. So therefore, the environment is also going to be different according to the children that you have and the stages that they're in and the needs that they have. So as Muslims, this concept of the prepared environment is not something new to us. Okay, Dr. Montessori spoke about the prepared environment probably in the 1930s or something like that. But our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, in many years before that, thousands of years before that, you know, in the revelation of the Quran, time and time again, Allah tells us that he designed this universe specifically with signs and with experiences to teach us and support us in the purpose that we have here and the journey that we have. So in a way, the Quran is teaching us about the prepared environment of the universe that Allah has designed specifically for us human beings so that we can reach him and so that we can fulfill our purpose of life. So the prepared environment before Dr. Montessori, it's actually very much a Quranic concept, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he prepared this universe as an environment specifically prepared, including everything that's needed for us Muslims and us human beings, to be able to fulfill our purpose of life. So the prepared environment is very much a prophetic Quranic concept. So when we take Dr. Montessori's concept of prepared environment, but we start to now see it through the lens of the Quran, we can see that this act of specially preparing a nurturing environment, that's something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done for us. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, when he moved to Medina, one of the things that he started doing was preparing their environment, right? Where the mosque is going to be, where this is going to be, where that's going to be. Preparing it in such a way that allows people to flow with their faith and their belief so that they can attain their purpose of life, fulfill the purpose of life. So the prepared environment, it's this concept that it's not new to us. It's been there from the time of Prophet Adam and before, right? Dr. Montessori says that the first thing the child's education demands is a provision for an environment which he can develop the powers given to him by nature. So if we're taking this prepared environment concept that Allah created this universe as a perfect environment for you and me and every single one of us to learn about him and to get closer to him and to make the mistakes that are necessary to become closer to him and to have the experiences that are necessary to become closer to him and gain the knowledge. We take that concept and we now think about the child. What we want to do is we want to prepare this kind of mini environment like the universe. We want to prepare this mini universe for the child that it's going to teach them about the bigger universe. So if the universe is our prepared environment, the younger child, before they're ready to go out into this universal prepared environment, they first need this mini prepared environment, which is going to teach them about the environment that the universe that they're going to live in as adults. And that's basically the concept of the prepared environment, is we need to have an environment for the children that is based on the universe, based on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed the universe and designed the world. Okay, including Tawheed, including knowledge about the world and connecting in the right way and everything. We need to have this spiritual prepared environment that's just a smaller size, ready to give the child all the experiences they need for later on when they're out in the whole universe. One of the ways that I like to think about this is in terms of the universe is a madrasa. I'm sure you're all familiar with the word madrasa, right? Madrasa means school. So the universe is a madrasa. The whole universe is a madrasa that is constantly teaching us every single day. And then we want to create this small madrasa pool, a tiny little pool, a madrasa, that's teaching the child about this big universe. If you think of the big universe as an ocean, then our small prepared environment for the child is like a little pool within the ocean. And of course, we all know that we're not going to send our children straight to swim in the ocean, but we want them to learn how to swim in a pool first and gain that knowledge and that experience and that strength and everything. And then we will let them out into the universe, into the ocean and into the universe. Okay, so this is really much the prepared environment concept is like that. Okay, and you know, at each stage of the child's development, that little madrasa or that prepared environment gets broader and broader and includes more and more and more experiences. So if you look at the chart that we have here, and I call this chart from home to cosmos, okay? Cosmos as into the universe. So if we look at the first circle, the child who is from the age of 0 to 3, you know, before 0 to 3, they have the prepared environment in the womb, right? And then they're born. And then from 0 to 3, the prepared environment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made for the child is the home environment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it that the child must breastfeed from the mother, so that the child is always with the mother. So they're always at home in this home environment, which is the first prepared environment that we need to consider. And then as the child comes to about the age of 2.5 to 3, we see that they start to need a lot more. They want to make friends, they want to have experiences, they want to go out, and then we have the home or the school environment that the child attends, you know. And usually most of these young children, they're only going to attend half day. So they're not having their full time in school, but it's just, they're getting this lovely experience and taste in a home and school environment. And this is supposed to be preparing them for the next environment, which is 6 to 12 years, where children will go to school, or maybe they'll be homeschooled, but they're having all of this interaction with the local community, with the local environment. They're having this interaction with other children, with teachers. They're, you know, and in Montessori, our prepared environments for 6 to 12 are completely different from modern schooling, and the same for 3 to 6. But the concepts that we use when we prepare our environments are the universe. So what you see in the universe, you want to have it in the environment, right? And then 12 to 18, now the child has been in school for so many years. They've had their home environment, their school environment. They're craving for more, and that's when traditionally children, adolescents, traditionally in history, they'll go out into society. They'll begin taking internships. They'll begin having these experiences. You know, still having a home environment, but at the same time experiencing the outside world and developing themselves into the adult who they're going to be. And then eventually at the age of the third plane of development, the fourth plane of development, by the age of 24 and above, the child is out into the big madrasa, the universal madrasa, okay? The one that is prepared for us human beings to take us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's really the concept of the prepared environment. And it's really important to, when you think of the prepared environment, don't just think of physical. You know, lots of people get trapped in thinking of small tables, small chairs, accessible materials. But we have to also think about how we want to prepare the social environment. What are the ethics and the morals and the etiquettes that we want to have in this social environment? And it starts with us as adults, us as parents, us as adults. What kind of role model do we want to be for our children in this social environment? And then we have the spiritual environment as well. And the spiritual environment, as Muslims, this is so important, more important than the physical and the social. Okay, how are we going to ensure that our environment is supporting the development of the child according to their fitrah, to have that pure connection with their creator, to have that strong belief in their creator, to have that positive thinking of their creator? Okay, so all of these aspects are part of the prepared environment. And if you look at the universe that Allah created for us, you'll see that this universe has a physical part, it has a social part, and it also has a spiritual part. So when we're thinking about the prepared environment for the child, we need to reflect that prepared environment on the one that Allah prepared for us and have all of these things in place. Okay. So if we're looking at the social environment, I'm going to talk a bit more about that now. The spiritual environment, we have one more session where I'm going to talk about religious education of the child from the Montessori and Islamic perspective. So for now, we're going to go and just talk about the social environment part. So there are many factors that influence socially are going to influence how we prepare that environment, or influence the prepared environment that's going to affect the development of the human being or the development of the child. So the first factor that we all know that affects the children are their parents. And we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was so specific that even choosing your spouse has to be made with the right intention and with the thought of the children that you're going to have in the future, right? So even before you even start to have a family, you start to have children, he's given us guidelines for how we prepare this social environment, this social environment for the child, by choosing the right father or the right mother or the right families that we're going to get into. And of course, like, you know, when you're working as a practitioner, you don't get to choose this part for the children. You don't get to choose, you know, we're getting them when they've already gone through that stage. But it's something that we do need to keep in mind, okay? That the parents are having such a huge influence and impact on their children, okay? And then, of course, after the parents comes the immediate family, the immediate and the extended family. You know, how do these families live their life? What's the principles of their life? What's their morals? What are their belief system? How are they interacting with the child? Okay, family is going to have a huge impact on how children develop and who they become. And then we have the teacher and the school, and this is maybe where we can start to influence, because the parents and the family, we can give parent education and we can work with parents, and it brings about really beautiful results. But in the end, we can't make a parent change something. And I think in your case, in Ummah Jameelah, you don't have that much time with the children, you don't have that much time with the parents, so it's a bit more challenging. But parent education is really important. And one of the things that I did when I opened my school in Malaysia is we really emphasized about the parent community. And it's really incredible to see the kind of the community of parents that we have and the changes that they make in the lives of their children at home because of the result of what they are getting from the school. Okay, but you know, you can't really do too much, as if you're not, you know, in your cases where you don't have the children that much. But then when it comes to the teacher in the school, of course, there can be a lot of choice here. So choosing which teachers work with the children, and how is the teacher's energy, how is their intention, what's the intention for the work that they do, how is their energy with the children, how do they interact with the children, you know, even the culture of the school, or the culture of the preschool that they're attending, or the play group that they're attending. I'm sure you guys know that, I mean, Ummah Jameelah is a really beautiful thing that you've put together, and I'm sure that most of you would not want your children to go into another playgroup that doesn't have that kind of beautiful intention or beautiful social environment, because you know it's going to affect the child. And then another level is the immediate community and society. You know, the immediate community and society, it's going to impact your child one way or another at some point in child development. And this is one of the reasons why so many people are making hijrah, especially recently. We have like an influx of people coming into Malaysia, making hijrah from all over the place to Malaysia. And it's really funny because they email me, they're like, we're making hijrah from Malaysia, we want to put our children in Rumi Montessori. And I'm just like, how did you hear about us all over, like in Germany and like Finland, and you know, how did you hear about Rumi Montessori? But so many families are now seeing that this immediate community and society that's around the child, even if we filter a lot, it still impacts the child. It really still impacts the child. And especially as they get older, the impact is greater. And of course, it doesn't mean everyone should make hijrah, because if everyone make hijrah, then the environment is just going to get worse out there, because there's no one to balance it out. But it's something that we need to be really aware of. And so when we prepare our home environment or our Ummah Jameelah environment, we need to make sure that we're really emphasizing things that are going to balance out the impact that they have from the immediate community or society. And then, of course, there's the whole global influence. the global social environments, you know, the trends that are going on, the things that the people are facing now, especially like with this genocide that we have going on in Gaza. You know, like this whole global thing is affecting many children all over the world because they're hearing parents talk about it. They're seeing families upset about it. They're experiencing all of this. You know, we can see, I mean, even in our preschool, like one day I walked into the preschool to observe, and all these little tiny children were drawing Palestinian flags. And we were like, huh? How did that even come into the class, you know, with the smallest of children, you know? And it just shows you that somewhere they've heard discussions, they've heard, you know, parents talking about it, they've heard things, and it's impacted them. Do you see? So this global social dynamics that we're living in, it's also impacting the development of the children. And what we need to do as educators and parents is we really have to be aware of each one of these levels. We have to be aware, and where we can make a change, we should do our very best. The way that I see it as educators and parents is that we cannot create the perfect environment for the child. We cannot create the perfect social environment. Even if you make hijrah to Malaysia or to anywhere else, there's still going to be things in a society and a community that's not healthy and good for the children. So we can't create this healthy environment, perfect healthy environment, but we should just try our best. The way that you know, my husband was telling me, if you know about the stories of the prophets, of course I'm sure you know about Prophet Musa, right? But there's also another Musa in the story of the prophets. It's Musa as-Samiri, right? Are you familiar with him? He was raised by Angel Jibreel. Yeah, are you familiar with him or not? So in the stories of the Sirah, there's also Musa, who is he's called Musa al-Samiri, and he's the one who collected the dust that was from the feet of I think it was Angel Jibreel when he stepped, and he put it in the cow, the golden cow, because you know at the time of Prophet Musa they were worshipping a golden cow when he left them, and it made the cow moo or something like that. Okay, so my husband tells me the story. He says to me, you have Prophet Musa, who was raised by the Pharaoh, and he was raised by one of the worst men that existed, and Prophet Musa became from the best of the men, from the best of the believers. And then you have Musa as-Samiri, who was raised by Prophet Jibreel. So not Angel Jibreel, sorry. He was raised by Angel Jibreel. So he was raised by an angel.
Assalamu alaikum. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
It's okay. Yes.
Sorry about that. I got disconnected because my internet dropped. So I'm sorry about that. Anyway, going back to the story, my husband always tells me as educators and parents, we can only do the best that we can do, and we have to leave the rest up to Allah because we cannot control the outcome. And he gives the story of Prophet Musa, who was raised by Fir'aun, and he became from the best of people. And then we have Musa as-Samiri, who was raised by an angel, but he led the people into shirk. And my husband uses that example to show us that it's like, as parents and educators, Allah's only going to judge us based on us doing the best that we can do. But how our child ends up later on in life, who they choose to be, who they choose to become, whether they choose to follow the deen or not follow the deen, whether they choose to be kind or not be kind, that one is in Allah's hands. Allah's not judging us on who they become, but on what we do in the process. So it's about us doing the very best that we can as educators, as parents, to raise our children in the best way possible. And then we leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. And that's why, like, when we're talking here about the community and the global society and the teachers and everything, we cannot create that perfect environment for the child. And Allah doesn't expect that from us. But He expects us to try our very best. And we have to remember that even if we do our very best, it doesn't guarantee that our child is going to become a pious person. That is up to Allah. Allah is the only one who can put the hidayah in your child's heart. And of course, as parents and educators, we have to always be making dua to Allah that He guides our children, despite the negative influence, despite the social dynamics despite the mistakes that we make, that He guides them and He enters the hidayah in their hearts. And I think it's just important to touch on that right now when we're talking about this. So when we're talking about the prepared environment, it's understanding the importance of that concept, understanding that that's how Allah nurtures us, through a prepared environment. And for the children, we also want to nurture them through a prepared environment. And that prepared environment must be an environment that is designed to specifically meet the needs of the child during that stage of development. So the third part of this triangle is the adults or the teacher. We've got a few more slides, so I just want to go through them, even though we've been an hour already, just so that we can finish this part. So the third part is the adults. Okay. So Dr. Montessori, as an educator, she really emphasized the importance of becoming a prepared adult. Okay. So you don't just train on how to teach maths and how to teach science and then you're just with the children. No, she talks about the adult having to prepare themselves spiritually to be in the right state and the right character to truly be with the children. Okay, she believed that the state of the adult that surrounds the child is going to have one of the greatest impacts on the development of the child and the development of their character. And, this adult includes the teacher and includes the parents as well. Okay, so when Dr. Montessori talks about the prepared adult, she says that the vision of the adult should be at once precise, like that of a scientist, and spiritual, like that of a saint. The attitude of the adult should be at once positive, scientific, and spiritual. Okay, so if you think of the most amazing person that you've ever met, think of the most amazing person that you've ever met, that you've ever talked to, or that you've ever connected to. Most likely they had a very positive attitude and they were very precise, like a scientist, and they were also very spiritual, because this is what makes up a very holistic human being. If you think about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we all know he was really positive. Okay, there's no hadith or recording from Sirah that talks about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being negative or being having this energy that's not right. There's nothing like that, because he was really positive. We also know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of his characteristics is fatanatun, which means highly intelligent. So the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was highly intelligent and precise, like a scientist. When Dr. Montessori talks about precise like a scientist, we're talking about that very perfect intellectual but very well-grounded character of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then, of course, spiritual like a saint. So as educators, we might not have all of that, we might not be a scientist, we might not be spiritual like a saint, we might not be positive all the time. Every single one of us has things that we need to work on, okay? Because we're human and we're not perfected human beings, okay? Usually at this point in the course, I would ask people to discuss this quotation and how it relates to us as Muslim educators, but I think you can discuss that amongst yourself, because I don't want to take too much time with that right now. Okay, but I really want to talk about this preparation of the adult that Dr. Montessori spoke about, because none of us are perfect. We all have work that we need to do on ourselves. This is part of being human. And Allah doesn't expect us to be perfect, but He expects us to keep working on ourselves. So Dr. Montessori, she says that in order to truly become an educator of the child, we have to raise ourselves spiritually to the level of the child so that we are ready to serve the child. And this can only take place if we undergo a transformation on 3 levels. And the first transformation that she spoke about is the spiritual preparation. She says that we have to rid ourselves of envy, hatred, anger, our prejudice, our wrong understanding of the children, our prejudice against the child. We have to cleanse ourselves from all of these negative traits and these negative qualities that are within ourselves. She says that the real preparation of the adult is the study of oneself. The training of the teacher who is to help life is something far more than just the learning of ideas, and it includes the training of character. It is a spiritual it is a preparation of the spirit. Okay, and then this quote is, I always read this quote where she says, we insist on the fact that a teacher must prepare himself interiorly by systematically studying himself so that he can tear out his most deeply rooted defects, those, in fact, which impede his relationship with the child. So all of this defected, negative characteristics that we have inside us, the hatred, the envy, the jealousy, the prejudice, all of this, we need to kind of rip it out from us and work through. And then we need to study ourselves so that we can understand ourselves. We need to understand ourselves, and we need to love ourselves. Not love ourselves as in love ourselves because we're the most important thing. No, love ourselves as in you need to come to terms and peace with who you are and who your personality is. And stop comparing yourself to other people and comparing yourself to this or that, or stop living your life through the lens of people who put you down as a child or whatever it may be as an adult. You have to come to terms and accept yourself first. Accept who you are with your uniqueness, with your flaws, with your positive attributes. Accept yourself and accept that you are a human being who's imperfect, but you're on a journey to perfect yourself. And as we accept ourselves, we have to rid ourselves of all of these negative connotations and negative prejudice that we're carrying with us. Dr. Montessori says that often when we look at the child, we're not seeing the child who's in front of us, but we're seeing them through our own lens. And many people see the children through their lens as a child, or through what they experienced as a child. So part of the spiritual preparation is you have to remove that from yourself. You have to remove these qualities. And the first point is you have to reconnect to who you are and accept who you are and begin to embrace your positives, your flaws, and work towards improving yourself. Because once you prepare yourself spiritually and prepare yourself in terms of your own relationship with yourself and then your relationship with your creator, then your true personality can flow. And it can flow free from all of this defects that Dr. Montessori talks about. Okay, we have to remember that as Muslim educators, we're not just being a Montessori teacher or being a preschool teacher. That's not the aim of the work that we're doing here. We've spoken about the aim so much, but we have to remember that our work with the children is supporting the child who is building the future man or woman that they're going to become. And we want our children to become better than we are. So we always have to keep this spiritual preparation at the forefront of what we're doing, because we don't want our children to pick up our flaws and our defects. We don't want them to have that same struggle that we have. We want to improve ourselves, but at the same time, while we improve ourselves, we want to be with the children in a way that they don't have to pick up those defects from us. Okay. So as Muslim educators, we always have to refresh and renew our intention of why we are educators, why we are working with the children, so that we can present the best of ourselves to the child. Okay. And we have to remember that if we are doing this effort of education with the children with the right intention, it becomes ibadah. You know, some people are able to wake up every night and pray tahajjud, and mashallah, it's amazing, but not all of us can do that. But, you know, for those of us who are teachers, we can turn our effort and energy into ibadah by having the right intention. And I think it's really important, like when we're working on that spiritual preparation of ourselves as educators, we have to really, really consider our intention, so that we are changing ourselves with that right intention of being able to serve the child, and then have ihsan in everything that we do. So everything that we do with the children, we have to try our best to have ihsan in it. If you're doing it as ibadah, then you're going to do it in the best way that you possibly can. But if you're doing it as a job, or you're doing it as a career, and that's your intention and that's your focus, then it's going to be limited to that, right? And we have to keep the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we're talking about spiritual preparation, we have to keep the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as our example. Dr. Montessori says, we can speak to the teacher within our students only when we are on speaking terms with the teacher within ourselves. So the way that I see this is, you can only connect to the fitra of the child once you reconnect to your own fitra. So you can only connect to the fitra that is within that child once you start reconnecting to your own fitra that Allah has put you inside you. So Dr. Montessori, hold on a second, let me just, okay, it's not that, can we continue, or is it too, do you guys need to go? If we just continue quickly, I'll try and make it really quick. Okay. So this is from Imam Ghazali. He said that the first duty of the teacher is to be sympathetic to his or her students and to treat them as his or her own children. So he's also emphasizing about how we develop ourselves spiritually. And that baby's just so cute. He was in our toddler, but anyway, he's grown up now. So Dr. Montessori says that in order for us to be this spiritually connected adult, and for us to be able to really support the development of the child, we have several important tasks that we need to do. And the first task that she talks about is observation. And I already spoke about observation before, and there's also a video about observation on the platform. So I'm not going to take too much time to read about observation here. But observation is a really, really important part of our duty as mothers, as educators, because it's through observation that we will really be able to know how to assist the child in their development. It's when we observe the child, then we will really see what their fitra is directing them to, and how we can adapt our environment, how we can adapt ourselves to cater for the child. And then the next task, which Dr. Montessori says that we as adults need to do, is prepare the environment. And we've already spoken about prepare environment. So observation, preparing the environment. And then the third one is removing obstacles that are in the way of the child's development. Okay, so these are actually the three main duties of an educator, according to Dr. Montessori: to observe the child, to prepare an environment, and to remove obstacles. What does removing obstacles mean? So anything that is impeding the development of the child, anything that is stopping the child from following their fitra. We as educators and parents, it's our duty to remove those things from the child's way. So we gave an example before that, let's say children who are between the ages of 1 to 3, they're developing their movement. But if they're strapped in a high chair all day and strapped in a pushchair all day and a car seat all day, and they're not given the opportunity to move, then that car seat becomes an obstacle for their development of movement. That pushchair becomes an obstacle to their development of movement. So we as educators have to be sensitive with our knowledge of how children develop. We need to be sensitive so that we can remove that obstacle. Okay. Sometimes obstacles are that we are too pushy with the children, that we are pushing them to do too much, or to achieve this, or to read earlier, or to walk earlier, or to this. We're pushing their development, trying to make it speed up. That's an obstacle. Pushing the child to learn faster and it not according to the fitra, it's an obstacle to their development. And then on the flip side, neglecting the child and not giving them what they need. So failure in meeting the needs of the child is also an obstacle. So we have to always be in the middle. We're providing the child what they need and we're removing the obstacles. So we're not becoming passive and complacent that we don't do anything. And at the same time, we're not becoming controlling that we're sitting in the driving seat. So an environment, any environment at home or at school, can be too much or not enough stimulating. And we need to get that balance right. And the way that we know how to prepare the environment is by knowing all of these things that we spoke about the plane of development. So the child between 3 to 6, they're developing their language, they're developing their movement, they're developing their culture. All of these things, we prepare the environment according to that, according to the sensitive periods, according to the absorbent mind. If we miss out on some of the sensitive periods, then that's not enough stimulation for the child, then that becomes an obstacle. Whereas if we have things in the environment of the child that the child is not ready for, because it's for a different plane of development, then it becomes too stimulating, and then that's also an obstacle. Okay, so it's this is an important role of the adult, to remove obstacles that are in the way, that are stopping and impeding the child from developing. Okay, so I got to the end of the slides. Does anyone have any questions? Sorry that it's taken much longer than I know, it's getting late. Has anyone got any questions at all? Okay, so I'm going to stop the